In the morning when I rise, in the morning when I rise, give me Jesus, give me Jesus, give me Jesus. You may have all this world. Give me Jesus. Dark midnight was my cry. Dark midnight was my cry. Dark midnight was my cry. Give me Jesus. Give me Jesus. Give me Jesus. You may have all this world. Give me Jesus. Just about the break of day. Just about the break of day. Just about the break of day. Give me Jesus. Give me Jesus. Give me Jesus. You may have all this world. Give me Jesus. Next verse. Oh, when I come to die. Oh, when I come to die. Oh, when I come to die. Give me Jesus. Give me Jesus. Give me Jesus. You may have all this world. Give me Jesus. I want to read two scriptures first and remind us. Genesis chapter 2, verses 21 and 22 says, And the Lord God caused a deep sleep to fall on Adam, and he slept, and he took one of his ribs and closed up the flesh in its place. Then the rib which the Lord God had taken from the man, he made into a woman, and he brought her to the man. Psalms 139, verse 13 and 14 says, For you formed my inward parts, you covered me in my mother's womb. I will praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Dr. Maxwell, your congregation.
All right, thank you very much, Elder Franklin. I first of all, I am very happy to be here, and I thank you for the opportunity. Just flip that, flip that, flip that. Yeah. Um, I was told by well, thank you for having me today. Sorry. I want to wish all the mothers a happy Mother's Day, and I pray that the Lord will continue to keep you. Elder Franklin did say to me that um, the topic, the theme, probably bearing God's offspring. That's what you were looking at. And he asked me to come by and to give a little talk and see how I can blend that theme, bearing God's offspring, in the talk that I'm going to do. And I was tossing it up, what to do, how to do, when to do, why to do. But since we're talking about bearing God's offspring, and we are in the season of motherhood and Mother's Day, I'm going to speak specifically. The presentation is more geared to women, and information that will benefit the women more than the men, but the information will also benefit the men. And so we're going to talk about, since we're talking about bearing God's offspring, it means that we need to ensure that we are in a state that we can bear God's offspring. All right? Our health is very, very important. Heavenly Father, we thank you today that we can again come by here to learn more of what you have done for us, and how what we do can influence how we respond to life and to what you have afforded us. Take control over each one now, we pray, for Christ's sake. Amen. Ella Franklin made reference to Psalm 139. And I have there Psalm 139:14. It says what? I will praise thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are thy works, and that my soul knoweth right well. And therefore each one, mothers to be, those who would be bearing God's offspring, and by extension I want to say, because regardless of what is being talked about in the world today, you can only bear God's offspring if a male and female come together. So, yes, we know of all sorts of things being talked about in the world today. But I'm saying to you today, from what I know and from the Word of God, a male and a male cannot bring an offspring forth. Neither can a female and a female. All right? And therefore, bearing God's offspring speaks to the male as well as to the female. All right? So I will praise thee, for I am fearfully, and each one is fearfully and wonderfully made. Because we're told in the Bible from the beginning, when we looked at creation, God, the Godhead, got down into conversation. And they said, let us make man. And when they spoke of man, it was in the generic term, meaning male and female. All right, so you are fearfully made. I'm fearfully made. We are all fearfully made. Now, like I said, we are talking specifically more female. Go back. Right. And from the time of birth until the time of death, there are changes that are going on in the life of every individual. But like I said, I'm speaking specifically to female. There are changes that occur in the life of a female. And these changes that occur are very important if you're going to bear God's offspring. Now, I would tailor the presentation to bearing God's offspring in the form of bringing forth a child, and bearing God's offspring in the life that you live. Now, for a child to be born, there's need, like I said, for a male and a female. You need sperm from a man. You need egg from a female. Sperm and egg will come together at the time of copulation. Male and female coming together. And we are Seventh-day Adventists, and I'm at a Seventh-day Adventist church. And we know that a male and female will come together at the time of marriage. The Bible says a man will leave his mother and father, come to his wife, they become one. And when when Adam and Eve were created, God said to them, be fruitful and multiply. In other words, what God was saying to them was to make offsprings like yourself. So come together, copulate, have sexual intercourse because you are married, and have offsprings. So from that time when the egg and the sperm come together, fertilization occur, and then that fertilized egg will go into the uterus, the womb, and it will develop in the womb. And after, the layman will say 9 months, but in actual fact, pregnancy is measured in weeks. 40 weeks is the time that you are given that date when you expect that baby to be born, or 279 days. And then a baby is born. Can be born before that time, can be born after that time. And then after birth, we have development, growth and development occurring. And so there are stages in which a female will go through. So you have birth, and after birth, we enter into what is referred to as childhood. So you have a child. Now then, we are told after childhood, then you get into that period that is referred to as adolescent. Now, during the adolescent period, there are a number of changes that will occur in the body of a female. All right? You have breast development. You have breast development. You have development of hair below the armpit in the pubic area. All right? You have development in terms of height. And then one of the changes that a female will notice is that they start having periods, bleeding every month, a cycle. Those are changes that occur, and those changes that occur, they are important if a female is going to reproduce. We're talking about bearing God's offspring. Now, if you don't get to that stage in life, you will not be able to get pregnant. You have to go through the stages. You have to get to the stage of adolescence when you start having your period. Because when you start having your period, basically what happens is that you have changes occurring in the womb and the ovaries that are preparing you for pregnancy. So when you get married, these changes will continue to occur, and each month you're going to have a period. Normally, that's what will happen in a normal female. All right? So you have a period where an egg would be shed or released from the ovary. And if you and your husband come together during that time when an egg is released, and you have sperm being released, then the sperm and the egg can come together, and fertilization will occur. And that fertilized egg will now go into the womb that was being prepared for that beautiful baby that the Lord would have blessed you and your partner, your husband, with. All right, so you get to the stage of adolescence, then you have adulthood. And a few days ago, I did a presentation at the Barbados secondary school, Seventh Adventist secondary school, and I was talking about teenage pregnancy. And I see we have I see we have teenagers. I would want to believe. Correct. And in actual fact, the presentation was about teenage pregnancy, and there's several complications that you can have as a teenager being pregnant or becoming pregnant. And it was in no way advocating that they should become pregnant, but it was giving information that they understand the problems that they can encounter so that they walk the path that the Lord would have asked us to walk and not get pregnant as a teenager. Because when you get pregnant as a teenager, your entire life would be affected. Whether you believe it or not, it is that way. And one of the things that studies would have found out is that when you get pregnant as a teenager, you are more likely to get a second pregnancy as a teenager. All right, so we're not talking teenage pregnancy today. But then you get to the stage of adulthood. And that is the stage when the body is prepared to bear God's offspring. As an adolescent, you're not prepared to bear God's offspring. You're still growing and developing. So teenagers who are in the congregation today, take your time. Enjoy life. Your teenage life is that time when you are growing, when you are maturing, when you are focused on your career, at becoming a nurse, at becoming a teacher, at becoming a member of the Barbados Defense Force or the police force or something like that. All right? Or you want to be this good carpenter or what have you. That's the time when you're focusing on what God has ahead of you. When you get to adulthood and you know you found that partner that God would have prepared for you when you get married, then you're thinking of God's offspring. All right? So you go to adulthood, and then you have development, growth, and development will continue. Then you will get to a stage where you are coming around the age where you would become a big girl, as I would normally say. All right? When you stop having periods, I refer to that stage where you're now a big girl. All right? Now, when you become a big girl, that's no longer the time when you can physically, we know what happened with Sarah, but that's the time when you would no longer be able to physically, biologically bear God's offspring, but you can still bear God's offspring because you can show the character of God by the way you live. And that's what we are all called to do. So my little brother, you can show the love of God to your friend and those that you come into contact with from day to day. All right? And then, so we get to menopause. Let's move the slide along. Now, in order to bear God's offspring, like I said before, we have to ensure that we have or we live healthy lives. You're not going to be able to, in a meaningful way, bear God's offspring if you have ill health. If you are not living right and you're not healthy. As a matter of fact, trying to bear God's offspring in ill health can to a great extent affect you. Now, biologically, if you become pregnant and you're not healthy, then that would not be good for you as the mother, and it will not be good for the baby that is developing within you. And similarly, in the spiritual realm, if we are not healthy, we cannot really bear God's offspring. We cannot do exactly what God would have asked us to do. Because if I'm bedridden, for want of a better example, if I'm bedridden, then I cannot go out there and to take a literature to my neighbor. I cannot go out there and tell a friend about the love of God and what God would have done for him. And therefore, every day as we live, we need to ensure that our lives are in harmony with the health principles of God. Are we together? Good, fair enough. Now, there are certain things that we can do as individuals to ensure that we live our lives in optimum health. And there are some investigations that we can do that would ensure that we are healthy. We probably would have heard from time to time they say, check your numbers. All right? And there's some what we call screening investigations that are being done from time to time as you move along the spectrum of life of age, then their investigations are done. Screening investigations, basically, you may not be feeling ill or anything like that, but wanting to ensure that you are living life in an optimum way. From time to time you go to visit your doctor just to ensure that things are okay, that your numbers are correct. Numbers being, for example, your blood sugar, your blood glucose level, your blood pressure, your weight, things like that. You want to ensure that they're good, because once they are within the normal range, you know that your health is good. If they're outside of the normal range, then you know that there are certain things that you'd have to do in order to get them back to the normal range. So screening investigations basically are investigations that are done across the board. Nothing is wrong with you, but you just want to ensure that your numbers are right. So everyone within a population would have those investigations done. For example, like I said, your blood sugar, you just want to know that your blood sugar is okay. Now, when you do a screening investigation, what happens is everyone gets that investigation. And then the screening investigation will say, well, look, there's something here that is abnormal. So if there's something that is abnormal, you may need to do some other investigations. If with the screening investigation everything is normal, then okay, you're good. There's nothing else for you to do. Continue living life until probably a year or 2 years or 5 years, as the case may be. There's another screening investigation you have to do to ensure that you're okay. Now, if with the screening investigation something looks abnormal, then you'd have to have other investigations done. It doesn't mean because the screening investigation is abnormal, it is really abnormal. Because the screening investigation is just to say, well, look, there's need to check something out. It may be normal, but just because the screening comes up abnormal, the screening say, look, get this thing done. And when you go and you get that done, I will make reference to a few as I go on. When you get that investigation done, it may come out that, look, there's no problem there. So you go back to your regular screen. For example, skip the slide, please. Go on. All right. Sorry, I know that slide is a little, well, all the slides will be a bit busy because of the size of the screen that we have. Let me talk women. We were talking women talk today. For example, women are advised to have screening of the breast. All right, so there are different ways in which you can have a breast screen. First of all, women are advised, especially after you would have gone through, move from childhood to adolescent, you start having your period and things like that, and especially when you get to 40, 45, they're asked that you have regular breast examination done, and it is advised that you have the examination done more routinely. And one of the things that happen routinely is that you have a menstrual period every month. So during the time of your cycle, you're asked to just examine your breast, all right, in a systematic way to determine if there's any lump, if there's any abnormality in the skin, the way it looks, if there's any pain or anything like that. So that's one thing that is done. The other thing that is done is an ultrasound scan or a mammogram that is advocated. And if that is done, if there's any abnormality, for example, so your screening would be the mammogram. If the mammogram is okay, you go to your routine screening. If, for example, there's a mass or there's an abnormal area seen on the mammogram, then they may say, look, you need to do some other investigations. You need to do a biopsy. And so they will send you, you'll get that biopsy done. When the biopsy is done, the report may come back saying, well, there's nothing abnormal here, it's something that is benign, it's something that, nothing to be done at the moment, so you go back to your routine screening. If an abnormality is detected when the biopsy is done, then you may need further treatment or management. I'm saying this because when we are bearing God's offspring, if you're to bear God's offspring, you have to ensure that your body is healthy. So that if there's a problem detected, the problem has to be dealt with. So the breast is one of the organs that needs to be taken care of if you're going to bear God's offspring, because the breast is required for suckling. For the baby, when the baby is delivered, then you have to breastfeed the baby. There are a number of elements within the breast milk that is important for the baby, for the growth and development, and to fight off infection, all sorts of infection. Respiratory infection, gastrointestinal infection, brain infection, all sorts of infection. There are components within the breast milk that are important for the baby. All right? So that is one of the screening investigations that is important for women to do. The breast examination, the breast screen, if you're going to bear God's offspring. Skip the slide for me. Skip. Well, this basically is a diagram of the female reproductive organ. Basically, what you have is a uterus, then you have two fallopian tubes, you have two ovaries. The uterus, basically, the neck of the uterus is referred to as the cervix, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that because that's another screening investigation, an area where screening is being done if you're going to bear God's offspring. And then that opens up into the vagina. Next slide, please. Okay, we can skip that. That's a slide basically that deals with the menstrual cycle, all right? Each month, like I made mention before, there are hormones that are secreted in the brain that speaks to the ovaries, and we began with the text that says that we are fearfully and wonderfully made. And God knew exactly what he was doing, and he made all of these organs, and these organs are interdependent, all right? The brain, all right? And there are several little organs that are within the brain that influence an organ in the pelvis called the ovary, which secrete chemicals that will speak to the uterus, the womb. And the womb, as a result of that, will start preparing for a baby. When you are going to be bearing God's offspring, preparing for a baby, and that nice bed is prepared for the baby. If there's no babies, if there's no fertilization occurring, then that bed that was being prepared is being shed as your period. It is that bed that was being prepared for a baby that is being shed each month once pregnancy does not occur, as the lining of the womb, that's being shed as your period. Let's move on. Right. Now, I made mention of the neck of the womb, or the mouth of the womb, that is referred to as the cervix. And again, bearing God's offspring, it is very important that screening investigations be done to that organ, to the cervix. And the screening investigation that is done on the cervix is what is referred to as a pap smear. Now, pap smears are not recommended, and pap smears are only done in female because male do not have a cervix. Pap smears are not, it's not advocated that pap smears be done before the age of 21. And the reason why pap smears are not done before the age of 21 is because of the understanding the biology of the virus that really caused the problem with the mouth of the womb. Before the age of 21, basically, the immune system is going to take care of that virus. There's a virus called the human papilloma virus, HPV. And there's several subtypes of this type of virus. And subtypes of this virus can cause conditions that are very, very dangerous for the female. Conditions that will prevent you from bearing God's offspring. And we're talking about cancer of the cervix. So the pap smear basically is a screening investigation to help to detect any abnormal cells that can lead to cancer of the cervix. Now, like I said, before the age of 21, pap smears are not recommended. Between the ages of 21 and 29, pap smears are recommended every 3 years. Now, there's another investigation that is done in addition to the pap smear, That is the human papillomavirus test that is done. So you can do the test for the human papillomavirus at the same time when you're doing the test for when you're doing the pap smear. Sorry. Now, if you do the pap smear alone, then you have to do the pap smear every 3 years. If you do the pap smear and the human papillomavirus test, then you have to do that it is recommended that it be done every 5 years. All right? Um, and that starts from the age of 30 until 65. It is not recommended that pap smears be done after the age of 65. Understanding the biology of the human papillomavirus. The only time that pap smears are done after the age of 65 is if you had an abnormal pap smear just before you got to the age of 35. But if the pap smears were all normal after you get to 35, it is not recommended that you have pap smears done. I saw a hand to the back.
Yes, good evening. I was asking if you get the vaccine for the human papillomavirus, is it still possible to get it?
To get,
The virus.
yes, you can still. But like all vaccines, basically it will be a protection. Basically, your risk of developing the condition is much less than if you did not have the vaccine. All right. It is like any other condition that you have along the way, but your risk is very, very small of developing the condition. And there are other, in addition to the vaccine, there are other factors that will influence and determine the development of cancer of the cervix. All right, so that's the age group and the frequency with which pap smears will be done. And basically, that is the position that you're placing when you go to your doctor. That they do the pap smear. Basically, they place a little instrument called a speculum so that they can visualize the mouth of the womb, and then they take the smear from the cervix, and they will examine that under the microscope to determine if there's any abnormality, if there's an abnormality or not. Now, like I said before, the pap smear will be a screening investigation so that once your pap smear is normal, then you will continue with your routine pap smears. If there is an abnormality detected on the pap smear, then they may depend on the severity of the abnormality. Then you may be referred to have what is referred to as a colposcopy, where the doctor is going to look at the cervix under a microscope, apply certain solution, some solution on the mouth of the womb, and examine to see if there's any change in the mouth of the womb, in those areas where that dye was applied to. If there's any change in the way that the cervix looks when the dye is applied, then they're going to take what we refer to as biopsies of those areas, pieces of tissue from those areas to send to the lab, and then the lab will confirm whether there's an abnormality or not. Why am I saying this to you today? I'm saying this to you today because if there are abnormalities that are induced by the human papillomavirus over time, mild changes that occur on the mouth of the womb, if they're not dealt with, they can lead to cancer of the cervix, cancer of the mouth of the womb. However, if you have the screening investigation done and abnormalities are detected, then you can be treated for those abnormalities to prevent progression to cancer of the womb. It therefore means that cancer of the womb is a condition that can be prevented. It can be prevented because we have screening investigations available where cells that can be transformed to cancer can be interrupted. Now, the thing about it, if you are to bear God's offspring, it will be difficult. There are a number of complications that can be had if you have cancer of the mouth of the womb. Now, the mouth of the womb is that area where the baby will have to pass through. Now, if you have cancer of the mouth of the womb, they're not going to allow you to have a normal delivery. You have to have a cesarean section. There are complications that can be had as a result of that. But what I'm saying is that once we detect, or once an abnormality is detected, and it is detected pretty early and treated appropriately, cancer of the womb can be prevented. And as a matter of fact, since the implementation of the pap smear and the uptake, meaning that individuals are regularly having their pap smears done, the number of cases of cancer of the womb, cancer of the mouth of the womb, cancer of the cervix have been significantly decreased. As a matter of fact, in countries like England, where the uptake is very, very high, then cancer of the cervix is a condition that is rarely seen. But in developed and developing country, it is more common. And it's common because individuals are not going to have their pap smears done. And not having your pap smear done, if there's an abnormality that is not detected and treated, then you understand what can happen. I made mention to the fact that in addition to the vaccine, because the vaccine is one of the preventative methods that we have, or one of the methods that is used in order to decrease the number and the prevalence and incidence of cancer of the mouth of the womb. But outside of the vaccine, the regular screening investigations that we have available is another method to decrease the risk of developing cancer of the cervix. There are other risk factors. And like I said, the number one risk factor for the development of cancer of the womb is the human papillomavirus. And there are different subtypes of the human papillomavirus. So that when you have the human papillomavirus done at the same time when you're having the pap smear done, basically they check for the subtypes that can lead to cancer of the womb, what is referred to as the high-risk subtypes. And you have subtypes number 16, number 18, number 41, number 43, number 45, and there are some others that are the major risk factors for the development of cancer of the womb. 16 and 18 being the major factors, they cause about 70% of the cancers of the womb of the mouth of the womb that you have. They are as a result of subtypes 16 and 18. And like I'm saying, if you have the screening on where these things are detected, then treatment are available that can prevent the development of these conditions. If you have these conditions developing, then you understand you can't bear God's offspring in a manner that is going to be representative, that you would be in optimum health where you can take care of that offspring. All right? Let's move on. All right, so I spoke about that. How do you get HPV? HPV is basically a sexually transmitted infection. You cannot, well, let me. Now, it comes by contact. And the most common way, probably I should say, is by sexual contact. All right? If there, I spoke of the subtypes that can cause cancer of the womb, but there are subtypes that can cause non-cancerous conditions, for example, warts. And you know, individuals can have warts on any part of the body. The most common areas to have warts would be the genital areas, the anogenital, the anogenital areas. And again, that can be as a result of sexual contact. But the subtypes that cause the warts are subtypes 11 and 6 and 11. All right? But for example, if a child has a wart and scratches that area, because warts can be pretty itchy, and scratches that area, and then come into contact with someone else and make contact, then you can have transmission of the virus in that way too. But like I said, the subtype that is transmitted via this way is for example, if you have the anal warts, the genital warts, and there are warts that even can be formed in the throat. All right, they can even have warts in the throat. which can also cause problems with respiration and things like that. All right? So it is very important that we ensure that we are practicing proper hygiene. All right? Move on, please. No, 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 no. Let me say that you can stop me anywhere along the line if you have any question, if you have want anything clarified or anything like that. Okay? You can stop me anywhere along the line. Now, basically, these are the high risk and the low risk subtypes. Like I said, the high risk subtypes 16, 18, 31, 33, 35, 59, uh, 45, 51. Those are the types that can cause cancer of the cervix. And the low risk subtypes 6, 11, 42, 43, 44. All right, those are going to cause conditions that are non-cancerous. Move on, please. All right, so cancers that can be caused by the human papillomavirus are cancer of the vulva, the oropharynx, I was speaking about the throat, all right, anal cancer, penile cancer, vaginal cancer, cervical cancer. You see the percentage here for cervical cancer. 91% of cervical cancers are caused by the human papillomavirus. And like I said to you before, screening investigations are available, and therefore no one should be dying in this day and age of cervical cancer. Because if you have your routine screening investigations done and abnormal cells are detected, that over time, because you would not have the conversion of these abnormal areas overnight from what is referred to as a precancerous condition or a condition that can lead to cancer. You would not have that development overnight. It will take several years. And therefore, if you have your investigations done and the investigations are done routinely, then you understand that this is a condition that can be prevented, and this is a condition that no one needs to die of in this day and age. And so you can live your healthy life and go on to be God's offspring. Let's move on. All right, that's just the subtypes, and like I said, this slide basically seeks to inform us with regard to the progression and how the cancer of the mouth of the woman can develop. And you see there, when you have your pap smear done, it will come back. Once everything is normal, it will come back saying normal. Or you can have changes induced by the human papillomavirus. CN 1, 2, 3. These are abnormalities that can be detected when you do the biopsy. And basically, you're going to have progression from 1 to 2 to 3 if you have persistence of the human papillomavirus. And like I said, there are investigations, there are treatment that can be given to interrupt the progression, to interrupt the human papillomavirus that can progress to the development of cancer of the womb. Are we clear? Move on, please. All right, that slide just showing the abnormality, the degree of abnormality that you can have. With the slide to my extreme left, and that will be your extreme right, left. That's the way the cervix will look normally. And then when you start having cancerous changes, then there are abnormalities that will be seen when the doctor looks at the mouth of the womb. Then these abnormalities will be noted. Now, in addition to the abnormalities being noted, when you look at the cervix, there are certain signs and symptoms that you're going to have as well. Abnormal bleeding, an abnormal vaginal discharge. All right? You may have pain. Bleeding may occur just like that, without any contact, or bleeding after sexual intercourse. All right, these are warning signs that you need to look for. If you have any of these, it is very important that you go have a checkup, have your pap smear done, because like I said, if there are any abnormalities that can be detected, they can be interrupted. Let's move on, please. Sorry. Yeah. Right. So like I said, screening investigations are done from the age of 21 to 65. All right? And that's because of the biology, after studying the biology of the human papillomavirus. the risk factor for the development of the human papilloma, of the cancer of the cervix is the human papilloma virus. Now, before the age of 21, if an individual is living a life, if an individual is involved in sexual activity at that tender age, then they are at risk of developing abnormality of the cervix. So that's one of the risk factors for cancer of the cervix. Early sexual encounter. Having multiple sexual partners. So with regard to older individual, if older individuals have multiple partners, they're at risk. All right? So that I made mention earlier with regard to the age, and I said it is not usually recommended to have pap smears after 65. But if you are well, not you, but if you have a 65-year-old who is involved in sexual activity and have more than one sexual partner, then you understand what can happen. I didn't hear you. And believe you me, we have them around. All right, we do have them around. All right, so once those are and so that we would inform individuals after the age of 65 that there's no it is not recommended to have pap smears. But if you are an individual who is sexually active and you have more than one partner, or if, let's say, at 64 you had your pap smear done and your pap smear had an abnormality that you had to be treated for, then definitely you would have to have pap smears after that age of 65. All right? I don't know if I answered you. All right, fair enough. Abnormal uterine bleeding, that's bleeding from the womb. It's another problem that women can encounter. And if you have abnormal bleeding of the uterus, then to some extent this can also affect you from bearing God's offspring. Now, abnormal bleeding from the womb basically is bleeding from the womb that is outside of pregnancy. That's how it is classified. And there are a number of things that can cause you to have abnormal bleeding. It can be what is referred to as a polyp. That's a little growth from the lining of the womb. All right, so an outgrowth that is referred to as a polyp. And usually polyps are not cancerous. They are what we refer to as benign condition. All right, polyp. But polyp can cause abnormal bleeding. If you have the polyp there, for example, polyp can come. You can have a polyp that starts in the uterus, and then it grows out of the uterus, and it is there in the vagina. All right, what is referred to as an endocervical polyp. Now, any type of contact with that polyp can cause bleeding. For example, you and your husband having sexual intercourse and you have bleeding. It may be because of a benign condition. It may be a polyp there. Now, having polyps can also prevent you from getting pregnant, one, but it can also cause women who are bearing God's offspring to miscarry. So they may have a miscarriage, meaning that before the baby gets to the period of viability, and in our setting we refer to viability meaning a baby that can survive if it is born. In our setting here in Barbados, viability is referred to as after 28 weeks. So once a baby goes beyond 28 weeks, that is a viable baby. If that baby develops, then there's a very, very high chance of that baby surviving. If it is before 28 weeks, then it is referred to as a miscarriage. Sorry. So that polyps can cause abnormal bleeding and can cause you to miscarry, one, or they can cause you to have a preterm baby. That's a baby being born before 37 weeks. All right? And there are a number of causes. Like I said, it may be a problem with polyp. It may be a problem with the ovaries, and the ovaries may not be functioning correctly, and that may be because of abnormalities in the hormones that are being secreted by the ovaries. There's some individuals that have a condition that is called polycystic ovarian syndrome, PCOS. These are individuals that have abnormal periods. So they may go on for several months without having a period, and then when they do have a period, they have a very, very heavy period. Now, individuals that have polycystic ovarian syndrome, these are individuals that do not usually ovulate. When we talk about ovulating, we're talking about an egg being released from the ovary. So if you don't ovulate, you can't get pregnant. And so if you have someone with that condition, then there are treatment that can be administered to ensure that the individual ovulates and that they can ovulate, they can have the egg so that the possibility of them becoming pregnant is there. But there's another problem that individuals who have irregular periods like that, several months without having a period, and then you have a period, and then several months again without having a period, and then you have a period. What happens is that during the time when you're not having a period, the lining of the womb is exposed to a hormone called estrogen. And what estrogen does, it causes the lining of the womb to get very, very thick. Now, thickening of the lining of the womb can, over several years, lead to cancer of the womb. On average, a female should have at minimum 8 periods per year. So if you start going 3 months and above without having a period, then that is going to be a problem. So at minimum 8 cycles per year. If you are not having cycles like that, and you are having cycles, probably 2 cycles a year, over a number of years, the lining of the womb gets thickened, and that can lead to cancer of the womb. So normally, if you're having an irregular period, you're having periods every 3 months, every 4 months, 4 months, 5 months, all over the place. Then it's very important that you see your doctor, you speak to your doctor with regard to this, because what will normally be done is that we'll have to induce bleeding, because if the lining of the womb gets pretty, and the thing about it is that when the lining gets pretty thick, then it becomes pretty unstable, and then you're going to have bleed. And understand what is shed as the period is that lining that was preparing for a baby. So each month, the lining of the womb gets thick, preparing for a baby. If that is not the case, then that is shed as the period. Now you can understand that if you have that lining being built up for 4 and 5 months, you have more lining being built up there. If you have more being built up, you have more to bleed. So they're going to bleed heavier, and they're going to bleed for a longer period. All right, so normally bleeding would be induced to prevent the lining of the womb from getting pretty thick, which, like I said, over several years can lead to cancer of the womb. Yes, my brother.
Doctor, I want to know the estrogen thing. Estrogen is supposed to be a good thing for the woman's body, or is too much of it?
All right, so estrogen is a hormone that is produced in the body. And estrogen is important for a number of things. For growth for when you have a girl, when they get to adolescence, estrogen is important for growth, one. Estrogen is also a protective hormone for the heart, females. And that is why it is uncommon for females before they get to menopause to be affected by heart attack and things like that. It is more common for the male, and that is because estrogen has a protective effect on the heart of women. All right? However, when you start having things like high blood pressure, diabetes, that protection can be taken away. All right? Estrogen is also important for a female with regard to the bone mineralization, so that individuals, female who suffer from fractures and things like that, are those who are when they get to menopause, because when you get to menopause, the level of estrogen decreases. And so the bones become brittle. So they're more prone to fractures and things like that. So estrogen has that protective effect on the bones. Estrogen is also important for the skin of the women. That nice, supple skin that they have. All right? Now, in addition to that, with regard to the urogenital system, urinary, vagina, and things like that, estrogen is important because it keeps the area moist. Individuals, when they start getting to menopause, when the estrogen levels decreases, what happens is that the lining of the vagina and things like that gets pretty thin. They can suffer from painful intercourse. They can suffer from bleeding during intercourse as well. And that's because of the fact that the estrogen levels are low. So estrogen is good. Um, right, estrogen is good. But when you have, like we normally say, everything is required in moderation. When you have too much of it, all right, that it affects the lining of the womb, getting the lining of the womb pretty thick. And the reason why it happens is because the ovaries secrete two hormones. Two hormones are secreted. Estrogen in the first part of the cycle that starts to prepare that lining. And then the progesterone is the other hormone that comes into play and continue to preparing the womb for that baby. Now, if there's no baby, basically what happens is that the progesterone, the other hormone, is withdrawn. And when you have the withdrawal of the progesterone, that is what will cause the blood supply and things like that to be decreased. And that is what is going to cause the bleeding. Now, in the condition that I was referring to, polycystic ovarian syndrome, where they have irregular periods, basically all that they have being secreted would be estrogen, 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 and you don't have that progesterone effect. So that in the treatment of these patients, for example, if you want to induce a bleed, basically what is given to them is progesterone to cause that bleed to occur. My sister, you had your hand up. Yes, please. If estrogen has something to do with the diet. Now, now
Yeah, yeah.
there are some estrogen, and there's some food that contain estrogen. All right. In the literature, you see phytoestrogen being referred to and things like that. And your body in and of itself makes estrogen. Now we talk a lot about cholesterol, and yes, we advise to be moderate in your intake and things like that. But the very cholesterol that comes from the diet is used as a precursor for a molecule, as a starting element for a number of the hormones that we have been produced. So, like I said, things need to be used in moderation. So, cholesterol in and of itself is not bad. There's several types of cholesterol that you have, or what we refer to as lipoprotein. All right? The low, what is referred to as the LDL, and then I remember I was speaking about your numbers and things like that when you have these investigations done. The low density lipoprotein, which is the LDL, which is one form of cholesterol, that's what is referred to as the bad cholesterol. The HDL, which is the high density lipoprotein, is what is referred to as the good cholesterol. But like I said, cholesterol is used as one of the building blocks for the very hormones that we have, the estrogen and progesterone and things like that, and other male hormones as well. Progesterone, cholesterol is the building block for these things. All right? Yes, yes, my sister. All right, I'll come to you. Sorry? Right, like I said, there's some foods that contain cholesterol. That's the question? All right. cholesterol, you know, as if you are going to make macaroni pie. All right? To make the macaroni pie, you need the macaroni, you need water, you put a little bit of salt, you need your stove and cheese and all of that. You boil the macaroni, then you put those things together and things like that. And then at the end of the day, when you put it in the oven, what you get out is your macaroni pie. That's what I'm saying. Estrogen is out there. But in order to have estrogen, you need cholesterol and other things to come together to make your estrogen. All right? Right, you were asking. All right, so the average age of menopause is 51 years. Now, there's some individuals that can get to menopause before that age, or there are individuals that get to menopause after that age. The average age of menopause is 51. Now, when you get to menopause before the age of 45, that is not really normal. That is referred to, that's because the ovaries start feeling early. And that's the condition referred to as premature ovarian failure. So before 45, it is not normal to get to menopause. But like I said, the average is 51. But individuals get to menopause 49, 50, 48, 52, and things like that. So the average, you have an average, but there's a range. All right? But when you get to that before 45, that is looked at as premature ovarian failure. Yes, please. Yes, boy. Let me hear you. If
So would you die in any of these?
if you will die if you have any of these,
Yes.
You talking about the whole thing, the whole.
well, any of those conditions can cause death. Yes. High blood pressure, cancer of the womb. Yes, they can all cause death. Yes. All right. Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Um, I'm trying to remember exactly what it is, right? But we was talking, it's something to do with the estrogen,
Right.
and
Then
then
you were
we were saying
genital
something,
tract.
right? So we was
Right.
talking about
Dryness of the vagina. Right.
and you see how is it possible where the moisture will be concerned? If suppose no is some person know that currently saying hang the belt long time ago.
Right. So there are things available on the market that can be used in order to prevent the discomfort that you have, especially during sexual intercourse. There are lubricants that are available. That's not at all what. Well, if they're not active, if they're not active with regard to sexual intercourse, they would not have that discomfort during sexual activity, but they can still have the bleeding. So there are estrogen creams that are available. For example, there are individuals that have um, conditions like when the bladder or the uterus or the starts to come down into the vagina, that you have to use a ring or something like that to help to keep it up because of the prolapse. Yeah, we prescribed a cream as well, and that's to prevent dryness of the vagina so that you can have easy removal of the pessary, the ring, to have it clean and reinserted. All right, so there are a number of things that can cause prolapse. Um, any condition that, all right, so basically in childbirth, and if you had a very traumatic delivery, what keeps the organs in place are what we call muscles and tendons, the pelvic floor muscles basically keep the uterus, because these things are there suspended and they're kept in place by the muscles and tendons. If you have any, for example, you have a very large baby, that can cause damage to the muscles of the pelvic floor. Now, the prolapse may not occur immediately at that time. So let's say you had one difficult delivery. You were in labor for a pretty long time. And then when the baby came, it was a pretty large baby. And let's say they had to apply forceps to deliver the baby. And then the birth canal, had several tears and lacerations and things like that. Those would weaken the pelvic floor. In addition to that, chronic cough, individuals with chronic cough, for whatever reason, bronchitis or something like that, they're coughing, there will be an increase in the intra-abdominal pressure, and that pressure is going to be transmitted to the pelvis. And basically, that is going to cause a weakening of the floor of the muscle. Heavy lifting, all right? Other things like basically the tendons and things like that are made of a substance called collagen. And there are individuals who have collagen disease, for example, and as a result of that, their collagen may be a little weak, so that their floor is not held up as it should. Because they may not have a problem, they may never become pregnant, or they may have never been pregnant, but they still have a prolapse. If they have collagen vascular disease, then that can predispose to the development of that as well. In a young person, those are things that can. In the older person, like I said before, estrogen is very important. Estrogen is what maintain the rogae in the vagina, keeps the vagina nice and moist and things like that. When you start having the levels of estrogen being depleted, decreased when you get to menopause, then the pelvic floor of itself can be get a bit weakened. And that is why, for example, during the time before they got to menopause, they may not have had a problem. But when they get to menopause, despite the fact that they would have had deliveries before, 4 or 5 deliveries, and they would have had instrumental delivery, they never had a prolapse. But when they get to menopause, after they get to that stage, because of the fact that the estrogen levels are pretty low, then these are things that will start to manifest. All right? Yes, my sister.
Effect as you get older, that your bladder get weak.
Yes. And that is why it was referred to as urogenital problems. Uro talks about the uterus and the urinary bladder and things like that. Urogenital. So yes, it can cause problems with the bladder as well. And the other thing is that when they get to menopause, um, post-menopausal women, that's women who have gone into menopause, they're more prone to bladder infection and things like that. And that's because of the fact that the estrogen is very important as well. Estrogen will help with regard to, like I said, the moistness that is there, the rogae that is there, the wall of itself, the wall of the bladder and so forth gets a bit thinner after they get to menopause. So they're more prone to the development of these conditions.
The same estrogen,
Right.
but yet sometimes when you're going through menopause, some doctors prescribe estrogen cream or injection. And then when you talk with some doctors, they try to talk you out of it from taking it and go through menopause gradually.
Okay.
What kind of side effect that this artificial estrogen can cause?
All right. So, well, supplemental estrogen. But the thing about it, I haven't gotten to menopause as yet. But um, I've heard women complain about menopause and the symptoms, the hot flashes and the irritability, and they don't want to see anybody, and they can get hot. And as a matter of fact, there's some women who say, during the night they have to wake up and change their clothing because they and things like that. And and the husband comes home, and they're ready to nothing wrong, but they're ready to, you know, that chair in that position for the last 2 months. I was no problem. But one day she comes in and the chair in that position. Who put that chair there? You know? So some individuals go through menopause. Yeah, individuals are different. And that is why I'm happy that men are here today too. So that you will understand that when they are behaving certain way, why they behave in certain ways. All right? Now, now if you are having severe problems, and that is why the doctor may say, because of the fact that you're not coping well, because your quality of life is important. All right? So they may advise hormone replacement therapy. And especially I spoke to you about individuals who get to menopause before 45. And I was speaking about the benefits of estrogen, especially in these individuals. The replacement of the hormone in the form of the therapy is very important for these individuals because you understand the protection that it has on the heart, on the bone, and things like that. All right? And then um, because women are delaying their childbearing career because of academic pursuit. Um, she may get married at 42. And then if she gets to premature menopause, you understand what is going to happen. She has a husband who is 37 or what have you. But she's young too, 45. And ovaries are not working as they should. Vagina gets pretty dry. You understand what is going to happen there. When it comes to time for her to fulfill her wifely duty, it can be a problem. All right, so these are things that may happen that would require in order to save the marriage and save life and things like that, right? Yes, my sister.
I I was hearing, I ain't sure if it is thing, that the absence of the menstrual cycle is what sometimes causes a lot of joint pains and different because you're used to having the menstrual cycle right after you finish. That all of these large joint pains. Like a woman one day was telling me that all the lips and the knee bones and all these things that hurt and she is because of the absence of that. Is there any truth to that?
That is not correct. The absence of the menses, it may have to do, like I said, with the absence of estrogen.
Oh, good.
All right, and not the period in of itself.
Right.
I know a number of women who I see from time to time who tell me that they would wish that they can stop having a period. Because there's some women whose periods are pretty painful because of certain other conditions that they have. All right? Subnormal bleeding can also be as a result of a condition called adenomyosis. The inner lining of the uterus is what we call the endometrium. There's certain glands and tissues that are found there, and these are the glands and tissues that respond to the hormone estrogen. Get thick, prepare for the baby. Now, you can have abnormalities where you have these very glands and tissues are present in the second layer of the uterus called the myometrium. And that's a condition called adenomyosis. When you have that, basically, the uterus gets a little more bulkier, larger, and you can have abnormal bleeding. Bleeding can be heavier than normal. All right, polyps, I speak about that, cancer of the womb, cancer of the mouth of the womb, and cancer of the womb. Why it's called metrial cancer, that's cancer of the womb. Cervical cancer is cancer of the mouth of the womb that we spoke about earlier, that can be as a result of the human papillomavirus. The endometrial cancer can be as a result of the very thing I spoke about, the estrogen, prolonged exposure to estrogen. And at the same time, there's some individuals, for example, they would have had breast cancer or something like that, and they would have had surgery for breast cancer. And one of there's a hormone that is administered to some individuals with breast cancer to prevent its recurrence. Now that therapy, tamoxifen, all right, prevent the recurrence of breast cancer, can prevent the recurrence of breast cancer. It's a form of estrogen that is being given. So it has a negative effect on the breast. However, it can have a positive effect on the uterus. All right, so it can cause thickening of the lining of the womb. So individuals who are on tamoxifen treatment for breast cancer, one of the things that they're advised to do is to have regular ultrasound scans done just to check the lining of the womb to ensure that it is not thickened. And if there is any thickening of the lining of the womb, they can have a biopsy done. And if it indicate any precancerous lesion, then you advise that they have the uterus removed. Because the only thing, and believe you me, the only thing that you need your uterus for is to make a baby. It is not required for anything else. Mhm.
I think when you're getting older, you start thinking differently.
Mm.
Doctors told you that you only need that for childbearing.
Correct.
But I differ.
You don't need it for sex.
I know you only, but then again, I differ again.
No, you don't need it. You don't need it for that. And as a matter of fact,
Just hear me out.
let me hear you. Let me sit down to hear you.
We are all women, but we are all. Don't
Let me drink some water to hear
drink
you.
water. I differ from that. When you as a woman have your uterus in, children can't get air. The thing is more better, right? When that is removed, you don't feel the same way.
All right. You, hold a while, hold a while, hold a while, hold a while, hold a while. You have your uterus in, right? But let me tell you something. It's a myth. It's a myth. Now, there are a number of studies that would have been done. So, sometimes it's in the mind. Now, there's no use of the mouth, sorry, mouth of the womb during sexual intercourse. The mouth of the womb can be there at sexual intercourse and can have bleeding and bleeding and bleeding because of so many problems.
That is why I like to talk, because I am talking my mind.
Yeah, talk your mind.
I talk in my mind. Listen, mistake, don't bring in that part. I talk in my mind. When I was younger and having whatever, it was great. Then something happened and that had to be removed. It is not the same as how you used to be. And it is not in my mind, even though doctors might have told you, well, they make thing a little adjustment and make it thing so that it would remain the same. It's not the same.
Okay, so it may not be the
Both
same.
ovaries are gone.
Right. So you understand the reason why the ovaries are needed. The ovaries is what gives you your estrogen and your progesterone. That is different from the mouth of the womb. So that if the ovaries are taken and if the ovaries were taken at a a young age, let me put it that way, where you were having the effects of the estrogen and you did not have the replacement of the estrogen, then that can cause a problem. No, I thought you were. So what I thought you were talking about was the mouth of the womb, the cervix, because there's a myth around that if you have a hysterectomy where you have the mouth of the womb being removed, then sex will not be like it used to be. That is not the case. All right, but if you have the ovaries removed, which are responsible for the secretion of your estrogen, and that is taken away at an early age. Like I said, one of the ill effects that you can have as a result of estrogen being taken away is that the vagina can become a little more dry, sex can become a little more painful, a little more difficult. Yes, when the ovaries are taken. That is correct.
What can I do?
All right.
I lose my groove, so I want it back. I want everything right back. I want. I'm being honest.
All right. So like I said, if the vagina becomes dry, intercourse becomes a little more painful, there are gels that are available. So lubricating gels can be used to help with that. The other thing is that you have the estrogen cream that can be used. All right. And there are different types of estrogen cream that are available. I believe of late we had a problem with getting the Premarin cream, but there's one called Ovestin that is available that can be used. These are going to get the lining of the vagina a little more thick and cause a little more that dryness that is there that is caused by the removal of the ovaries. So sex can become a little more enjoyable. Right. I thought you were going down the road of the mouth of the womb because what I was making reference to was with regard to the womb and removal of the womb. This is another cancer that people should not die from. Cancer of the womb. Cancer of the womb. One of the early signs that you see with cancer of the womb is that they have abnormal bleeding. It can become anytime, and especially let me make this point. Especially for women who are in the who are, those who are big girls, mean that they're no longer having periods. If you start having, if you and we measure menopause as going for 1 year without having a. If you went for 11 months without a period and then a period come, you're not a big girl as yet. All right, and you can still get pregnant. Who made that point? Yep, you can still get pregnant. All right. So when you go for 12 months without having a period, then we say, yes, you're a big girl. Now, if you become a big girl and you have bleeding, that's not normal. That needs to be investigated. Now, the most common reasons for big girls to bleed, believe you me, it is not cancer. The most common reason why big girls bleed is because of the loss of the estrogen. So the lining of the womb gets pretty thin, the vagina can get pretty thin, and things like that. And what we call atrophy, because of atrophy, you can have bleeding. All right? 1 out of 10 women who bleed after they get to menopause is because of cancer. 1 out of 10. It means 9 out of 10 is not because of cancer. However, when you have that bleeding after you get to menopause, then we have to investigate it to prevent that 1 out of 10. All right? All right.
What's about blood in the urine?
All right. So blood in the urine may be another problem. It may not be a gynecological problem. It may be a urological problem. What I mean, it may be a problem with the kidney, bladder, or the tube that leads from the bladder to the kidney. So it can be as a result of a stone, it can be as a result of an infection, it can be as a result of some other problem that is not, there may be what is called uh, uh, an outpouching in the bladder, we call it diverticulosis in the bladder and things like that. But it may not be related to the the uterus or the ovary or the tube or anything like that.
Diabetes like that?
Right. So one of the things about diabetes is that diabetes can affect the kidneys.
Right.
And if it is a complication of the diabetes, then you can have blood in the urine as a result of that complication.
Right. All right, one thing I wanted to clear up though, one thing. When you spoke about the endometrius,
Endometrium.
yeah, you were saying that like once every 4 months, like someone would see like the period, something like that.
When I was
That's
talking about,
Well, yeah,
if you have a period every
if you
4 months,
yeah,
that is not normal.
it's not normal.
No.
But what about if you have a period every month, but still you have the thickening and the endometrial? What what could
Right.
cause that?
So if you have bleed every month and
Uh-huh.
then you are thickening of the lining of the womb, that lining needs to be tested
Mm-hmm.
to be certain it is not a condition that can lead to cancer, what we refer to as precancerous condition.
Oh,
So you go, they do a biopsy. If it's simple hyperplasia, what is referred to, the biopsy will come out saying simple hyperplasia. Basically, one of the things that can be done is that they can give you the progesterone. I said progesterone is that hormone that will counter the effect of the estrogen. Right. That will counter the effect of the estrogen. So they may give you progesterone in the form of injection, tablets, or they may even say we can insert a device called a Mirena,
mm-hmm.
which is a progesterone secreting intrauterine device that is placed in the uterus, which will help to deal with that problem.
Right. So one more thing now. One more thing.
Mhm.
Yes, as we're here, we speak about cancer, and I think it's below. How many cancers we have below the belt? Can you tell me what they are, please?
All right, so anywhere below the belt, you can develop a cancer,
Mm-hmm. How much?
even to the grade 2.
Down to the toe. Are I talking in the yeah
Well, in the female, in the female, if all right, if you look at that this diagram that we have here, you have the uterus.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so you can develop cancer in the uterus,
Mm-hmm.
the mouth of the uterus called the cervix.
Mm-hmm.
You can develop cancer along the tubes, fallopian tube cancer. You have the ovaries that you can develop cancers in the ovaries. Then when you go into the vagina itself, you can develop cancer in the vagina. Outside of the vagina, you have the labial or vulva, what we call the vulva. You can develop cancers in the vulva as well. Yep. Yeah. So
So
anywhere along those lines you can develop.
That's about 7 now, so I count. All right. Okay.
All right, yes. We had a question over here. Somebody over here.
When you're a teenager and you have your period and it goes on sometimes for 2, 3 weeks, what seems to be the problem? Because I know a person that happens to, and she's been going from doctor to doctor and still she has not gotten that problem resolved.
All right. So at the two extremes of ages, you can have irregularity in the cycle. When you now start having your period, and when you come to that stage where you're going to become a big girl. So before you go for an entire year without having a period, when you get to 46, 47, 48, I said the average age of menopause is 51. You may find that you're skipping months without having a period. It is not abnormal. That is because of the fact that the ovarian function is decreasing. What you have from the time of birth, you have a fixed number of what we call follicles. And each month you have, after you get to menopause, after you get to adolescent, each month you have a number of these follicles start to develop. One will mature and produce an egg. That egg will be released. All the others will die. All right? So you understand that if you're born with a fixed number, each month the number of follicles that you have will be decreasing. So when you get to menopause, basically is that the number of follicles that you had from the time of birth would have been depleted. Now, at that extreme of age, your cycles can become irregular. At the time when you're now going to start your cycle, here is where you have, again, you're fearfully and wonderfully made. There is interrelation between the several systems that God would have created us with. Hypothalamic pituitary ovary. So a hypothalamus is an organ in the brain. Pituitary is an organ in the brain. Ovary is in the pelvis. Now these are all interrelated. All right? The hypothalamus secretes a hormone that says to the pituitary gland, you need to secrete two hormones, follicle-stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. These two hormones will act on the ovary, saying that you need to produce, first of all, estrogen, and then when the time comes for you to ovulate, there will be a surge in a hormone called luteinizing hormone, which will cause the egg to be released. And then it will say now to the brain, all right, you need to stop producing this follicle-stimulating hormone and start to secrete this other hormone called tell the brain to stop follicle-stimulating hormone after the luteinizing hormone will have come, so that the ovaries now start to produce your progesterone. So there is this interplay. Now, when you get to adolescence, now here is where that cycle will start to function now. So it may take some time before this cycle, this hypothalamus, pituitary, ovarian cycle to become real functional. So that is why it is not abnormal for a girl to have a period this month and then skip 2 months, or have a period within 19 days or something like that of a period, because of the fact that the cycle is now coming into effect. All right? That being said, though, I must say that a regular cycle, the cycle is being, what we refer to as 28-day cycle is what is referred to as the norm. But a cycle can be 28 plus or minus 7. So 28 plus 7 would give you 35. 28 minus 7 will give you 21. So a cycle between 21 days, every 21 to 35 days is pretty normal. All right? All right, Brethren, I think I've not completed the presentation. I have a couple more slides, but I think sorry? Continue? All right, go to the next slide. Let me see what I have there. All right, causes of irregular bleeding. Again, irregular bleeding can be because of pregnancy. Early in pregnancy, during what we call implantation, remember I said egg and sperm come together, fertilization occur, and fertilization occur in the fallopian tube. That fertilized egg will now travel back to the uterus and gets embedded in the uterus and starts to develop there. Now, during the time of implantation, you can have a bleed. That's the placenta, that's the embryo boring itself into the wall of the uterus. So you can have bleeding as a result of that. That can be pretty normal. Individuals may go and complain of the bleeding. You may do an ultrasound scan, everything may look okay. You reassure them. So it can be abnormal, irregular bleeding can be as a result of pregnancy. It can be as a result of infection. Infection anywhere along the urogenital tract or the genital tract. It can be as a result of an infection in the womb. It can be an infection in the tube. It can be infection in the ovaries. It can be infection in the vagina, all right, or the mouth of the womb, the cervix, all right? It can be as a result of birth control medication that patients are on, especially when they now start taking birth control medication. And oftentimes, individuals discontinue their medication because of the abnormal bleeding. So most of the times, what all that it may require is to speak to them, let them know these are things that can happen, instead of believing that it's a problem. And it may just be a side effect of the thing. And if you continue it for about after 3 months or they're being into it, that may subside. All right? Vaginal trauma. And trauma can be as a result of anything, from pleasure to being abused. All right? So, and in this day and age, because I've seen, there are men now who are putting on what they call beads on the penis, so that sex can be a little more what they call enjoyable. They like it the rough way, as some people would say. Well, you don't know. I don't know either. But yes, I've seen patients like that. All right? And so that trauma to the vagina, the beads that they put there, can cause laceration and tear and things like that. All right? If they have an infection during sexual intercourse, it's more prone to tear and things like that. So trauma anywhere along the line, like I said, for pleasure or for whatever reason, can cause thing. Uterine fibroids can be another cause for abnormal bleeding. And fibroids is a very common condition that we have, especially in the Afro-Caribbean population and the black population, basically. It's a very, very common condition, and you can have fibroids present anywhere along the uterus. On the outside, in the wall of the uterus, outside of the uterus, they can even come through the uterus into the vagina, and they can cause abnormal bleeding. We're talking about bearing God's offspring. Fibroids in and of itself can cause problems with getting pregnant and taking the pregnancy to term. So miscarriages and things like that can be as a result of fibroid. All right?
Excuse me, Doc.
Yes.
What are the real causes of fibroid?
All right. Fibroid is a misnomer, basically. When you think of fibroid, when you hear fibroid, what comes to mind? Some fibrous type of growth. Right. So it's basically the muscles that these tumors develop in.
Okay.
And it is believed that they are under the influence of hormones. Hormones, estrogen and progesterone, are believed to be involved in the etiology of these fibroids. But fibroids are non-cancerous conditions. You know what? That's correct. It shouldn't get you that way, though. Now, there is a condition called sarcoma. Sarcoma basically is a cancerous condition of muscle. Fibroid is a muscle. So in individuals who develop what they call fibrosarcoma, because it is the muscle of the wall of the uterus, the cell line that develops into that cancer is different from the cell line that causes fibroid. So it has been found that fibroids don't really undergo change that will lead to cancer. It is a different cell line altogether. Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
But then you develop cancer. And they say it, and they ain't tell you nothing else. They tell you boys, you need to get surgery. But then you decide, well then they say, well, okay, they could shrink. The boys will shrink. But still, at the end of the day, you develop cancer. So what am I going to say? Am I not going to say it's the boys?
Right, yeah,
So tell me, right.
you can say it's the fibroid, but it's not the fibroid.
But if the doctor tell me it's fibroids, then
Right.
what am I going
So that's what I'm saying.
Right.
I'm trying to find an appropriate example. You can suffer from high blood pressure. One of the things about high blood pressure is that high blood pressure. All right, let me step back. You can suffer from diabetes. Diabetes can affect the kidneys. As a result of the kidneys being affected, you can develop high blood pressure. And you can die of the kidney complication. But the kidney complication can be as a result of the high blood pressure or the diabetes. Would you call it the diabetes when it was the pressure?
Well, I call it what your doctor tell me.
Right, so what I'm saying,
Right, but I understand.
what I'm saying, the cell line that will develop to the fibrosarcoma is a different cell line that will develop into the fibroids.
Okay.
Now the other thing that you need to understand, for example, if they say that you had fibroids, if you had cancer of the womb, then the cancer of the womb could have been a cancer of the lining of the womb, and not because of the fact that you had the fibroids. So the fibroids could have been there, but you develop cancer of the lining of the womb. I spoke about the lining of the womb being thickened and then changes that can occur that can lead to cancer of the womb itself.
Right, that way was asking about the different ones, because
Yeah.
when you think it's one thing, it might be something different.
All right, probably that's saying that it doesn't need to go on anymore, so we need to probably stop because the computer it went off. Oh, okay. All right, yes. 5 minutes. All right, probably 5. Let's see what we have on the screen. Anything on the screen? Oh, it'll be here. Okay, fine. So those are fibroids, and those are different areas where you can have fibroids. All right? This is the top part of the uterus, where it's called the fundus, but that's the muscular layer of the uterus. So these are intramural fibroids. All right? Intramural in the muscle of the fibroid. That's the mouth of the womb, it's called the cervix, so that's the cervical fibroid. This is a pedunculated fibroid. That's outside of the uterus, all right? This is a subserosal fibroid, has the upper layer there. It's just under that layer. So fibroids can be in any layer. And fibroids can be you can have some very, very massive fibroids. I've removed fibroids that were way up to the top, so very large, and they can be of different shape and things like that, all right? Yeah, so like I said, they are normally under the influence of the hormones. So when you get to menopause, you can have shrinkage of the fibroids. They're not going to get larger. All right? Next slide. Go on. Well, that's basically with regard to, I was speaking about you can have abnormal bleeding, and when you get to menopause, when you're a big girl and you have an abnormal bleeding from the uterus, that uterus need to be sampled. They need to take a biopsy to rule out cancer of the lining of the womb. I said 1 out of 10 women who bleed when they get to menopause will be as a result of cancer of the womb. Cancer of the womb is a cancer that can be cured. No one needs to die from cancer of the womb. It can be cured if it is caught in the early stages. Because when you catch it in the early stages, when you remove the womb, you've removed the cancer. All right, so cancer of the womb, no one should die in this day and age of cancer of the womb. All right, move on, let's see what we have there. Uterine cancer may present with abnormal bleeding, I said, like to you before. Treatment is more effective with early detection. That's why I said to you, once you detect it early, you can remove that, deal with the problem. Trends in rate, new cases increased in 12%, 21% death. Black women are more affected by this 2 times more affected and 2 times more likely to die. If you are after menopause and you have bleeding, or if you have bleeding after sex, get in touch with your doctor to be examined so that you can determine. Because, like I said, bleeding after you get to menopause is not common. All right? Go on. That's it. Thank you very much. Well, that slide is just showing you that's cancer of the womb. That's an area where cancer develops. And I was saying, depending on how much of the endometrium is involved. If you have more, if the fiber starts to invade the muscles of the womb, then there may be, in addition to removing the uterus, there may be need for additional treatment. That's why I said early removal is early detection and treatment can be curative.
What causing the cancer to grow? This what it is?
Cancer of the womb?
Yeah. What causing it to grow?
Like I said, it's under the influence of estrogen. So it can be estrogen because of a tumor that you have within. So, for example, the organ that secretes estrogen would be your ovary, and there's another organ that sits on top of the kidney, all right, that secretes estrogen, all right. Now, if you have a tumor for whatever reason, so the ovary, if there's a tumor that develops in the ovary that is secreting this estrogen at high levels, then the estrogen is going to act on the lining of the womb. All right? If you are taking estrogen for whatever reason, let's say you're placed on estrogen, I said to you, cancer of the breast, there's one type of cancer of the breast that they give to prevent, for remission or to prevent recurrence. They give you estrogen in the form of tamoxifen. That can have a negative effect on the lining of the uterus. All right? So that if you have your uterus and you're given a hormone replacement therapy in the form of estrogen, what they normally place you on is estrogen and progesterone, because progesterone is going to counter the effect of the estrogen on the womb. Right. Correct. All right. Spring, let's see what we have remaining there. Right, that stands of the uterus. That's talking about the symptoms that you can have: watery discharge, discomfort, abnormal bleeding, pain during sex, and bleeding between the periods. All right, we spoke about that already. Examination, that's how you would be examined. Was all by manual examination, and there are times when you would have an examination of the rectum as well. So because there's some growths that you can feel from, to see the extent of spread to if it is very advanced. All right. All right. Don't go on with the slides. No, I'm saying to you all of these things. Yeah, I'll come to her. We're talking about bearing God's offspring, and you understand how, for example, if you're in the childbearing age, and these problems occur, you understand how they can affect you from becoming a bearer of a child. Now, you may be outside of the childbearing age, and if you're affected by these conditions, you understand that the reason for which we have been called, going into all the world and preach the gospel, your health is affected. You cannot show to individuals the love of God because your health is affected. And therefore, we are all called today to ensure that we take stock of our health in one way or another, even our men, to ensure that we can do exactly what we've been called to do, that of bearing God's offspring in what we do, in what we say, and physically becoming the bearer of a child. You are bearing God's offspring because that child is a gift from God, and you're called upon. It is your obligation to ensure that you train that child in the fear of God. Take us to the end of the slide, please. Yes, I'll take your question. Take us to the end.
What about goiter? I know it's goiter they calling it. So when you have goiter in the fruit,
Mhm.
what causing that?
Back. Right. No, no, no. Goiter again is an enlargement of a gland that you have in the neck. All right. And the enlargement can be just a swelling with no increase in activity or decrease in activity. All right? That's all it is. Now, there are times when the enlargement can become active and the gland can become overactive. That's what you call hyperthyroidism. When the gland is overactive, the times when the swelling in the gland can cause the gland not to function as it should. That is called hypoactive thyroid. And in both cases, they can cause one, because of the increased swelling, they can cause compression of your respiratory tract. And so, just for that reason, you may have to remove it. One, it may need to be removed just for cosmetic reason because you may not like how it looks. And because of the fact that you don't like how it is looking, you ask for it to be removed. Thirdly, if it is hyperactive, meaning that it is functioning, the hormones are being secreted, and because of the increase in the secretion of the hormones, basically it is affecting your health. Weight loss, increasing your appetite. Probably it causes another problem, hypertension and things like that. And because of that, they may need to remove, probably not all, but most of the hyperactive area, they may need to remove that. If they remove all of it, for whatever reason, and there are times when it can be cancer of the gland itself. If it's cancer, they remove everything. They would have to give you the hormone that was being secreted by the gland called thyroxine.
I had one, and I had surgery. It was I was in maybe 38, 39, and now I have one. It grow in bulk. Another one day, right? Now I never. Doctors asked me already. I never take anything. Doctor never give me any tablet for that. I just living. I ain't taking any pills, anything at all.
Right. So like I said, it may just be a swelling that it may not cause the gland to overact or underact.
Okay then.
It may just be a little, not little, but it may just be a swelling that is not affecting the gland itself. If it was affecting the gland, then you would have had to be given the hormone in one form or another. Medication to decrease the function or medication to increase the function.
Okay then.
If it was under functioning, then you would have had to be given medication to ensure that the activity is maintained, or if it was over functioning, then to reduce that activity.
All right.
As a grandmother, right?
Okay.
As a grandmother with granddaughters, would you recommend the HPV vaccine? You know what I mean? For
The HPV vaccine.
yes, for younger girls and what age?
Right. So
You
the
understand
vaccine is normally given to pre-secondary girls. All right. And if I would recommend it, yes, I would recommend it. Now, there's some vaccines that are given to the older age group too. For example, in some countries up until the age of 26, they advocate that they can be given it. Yes. And there are some talks around with regard to um, if they get the vaccine, then they may be more likely to be involved in sexual activity. No, 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 think of it. Before this time in which we're living, there were things like whooping cough and all sorts of vaccines we take to prevent certain things from occurring. Or if they do occur, then the severity with which we are affected is decreased. the human papilloma virus, the vaccine that is being given, is to prevent the development of cancer of the womb. It doesn't mean that you cannot develop it. The severity and the rate of progression and things like that can be severely decreased. And the vaccines that they're given are for the active, the HPV 18, 16, 18, 16, 18, 11, 6, 11, and there's some for the other high-risk subtypes. New start, I want to end with this. We are talking about bearing God's offspring, and we need to ensure if we are to be healthy individuals, we need to look at our diet. We need to be involved in exercise activities, and you don't have to be going to the gym or anything like that, or running around the garrison 4 times or anything like that. Simple brisk walking. If you like swimming, swimming is very, very good. If you like to cycling is good. Any form of activity, all right? Water, very good, all right? They say 8 glasses a day, but if you can take more than that, that's good, all right? Sunlight, vitamin D, temperance, moderate use of that which is good, and the total abstinence from that which is harmful. Air, fresh air, all right? Open the lungs, breathe, all right? Rest. Yes, when it's time to rest, rest. You know, sometimes we're in front of the television for long hours. We are doing all sorts of things and then trusting God. Nothing can beat trusting in God. You know, we are stressed out in life from day to day, but we can find that solace in God. It says, come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. I pray, God, that as we seek to bear his offspring in one form or another, biologically or by representing him in our lifestyle from day to day, that we will indeed be successful in what we do. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the way you have been to us this evening, and for the time spent here, the information given, the interactions that we've had, some of the things that we understand, some of the things that probably we are not in total agreement with. But we pray, dear God, that when all is said and done, that we'll be true representatives of you wherever we may go. So guide, direct, take control, and we want to indeed be light bearers for you in this world and in our neighborhood, in our homes, wherever we may go. So make this possible, we ask today. For Christ's sake, we thank you. Amen.
Amen.
And amen. Thank you very much.
On behalf of the Goodlands Seventh-day Adventist Church, I want to really thank my brother, Elder Maxwell, Dr. Maxwell, for coming and imparting such wonderful information, not only to our mothers and our ladies, but to all men as well. And I want to thank him. I pray that God will continue to bless him and keep him and bless his family as well. We will make use of this song before to close. Hymn number 51, Days Then in the West. Hymn number 51. We can stand as we sing this song. 2, 3. There is dying in the west, heaven is touching earth with rest. Wait and worship while the night sets her evening lamps alight through all the sky. Holy, 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 Lord God of hosts, heaven and earth are full of thee. Heaven and earth are praising thee, O Lord Most High. Lord of life beneath the dome of the universe, thy home. Gather us who seek thy face to the fall of thy embrace, for thou art Holy, 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 Lord God of hosts. Heaven and earth are full of thee. Heaven and earth are praising thee, O Lord Most High. While the deepening shadows fall, heart of love enfolding all, through the glory and the grace of the stars that veil thy face, our hearts are sing. Holy, 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 Lord God of hosts. Heaven and earth are full of thee. Heaven and earth are praising thee, O Lord Most High. When forever from our side past the stars, the day, the night, the Lord of angels on our eyes, let eternal morning rise and shadows end. Holy, 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 Lord God of hosts. Heaven and earth are full of thee. Heaven and earth are praising thee, O Lord Most High. Let us pray. Father in heaven, we want to thank you for a day well spent. Now take us to our various homes in peace and in safety, and may we tell someone about your goodness towards us. Bless us, we pray, for Jesus' sake. Amen. Remember, there's no service tomorrow night, but service continues on Wednesday night. May everybody travel safely, and